I used to think there was nothing more important than digging into the details of a conflict and figuring out definitively who was right and who was wrong, usually so I could prove that I was the one in the right, until I realised just how much it was costing me. I'm Nicola, and I've spent way too much of my life focusing on the technicalities of right and wrong, instead of focusing on what feels good. So I'm going to share with you what I've learned about the downsides on focusing on right versus wrong, and what I've learned to replace it with instead, so you can spend more of your time and energy being happy and enjoying life. In most situations, we are so busy figuring out who did what, who was right, who was wrong. We spend so much of our time and energy going through what happened in excruciating detail. The problem is that this actually gets us nowhere. Life is not neat and tidy. There are no clear answers in most cases, and no simple, satisfactory resolutions to these situations. But unfortunately, our society encourages this behaviour. It wants us to focus on facts and reason and logic and detail. And our legal system is the embodiment of this approach. It has become so focused on figuring out the details of who did right and who did wrong. It's made it into a fine art, to the point where nobody else really understands what's going on. Nobody really likes lawyers, and anyone who's involved in the legal process comes out the other end not really satisfied with what happened. Even if they win, it's an awful process to have to go through. And this is what this approach creates. When we focus on right versus wrong, it encourages us to focus on the past, on what did happen, on what unfolded previously, instead of focusing on the future, on what we want to happen next, on what could happen, on where we go from here. And unfortunately, it also focuses more on validating us, on validating our experience, our opinion, our point of view, instead of finding actual solutions. The research shows that the happiest and most successful people are those who are future focused, who are aware enough of what's going on for them that they can look at themselves and understand where they want to go from here. And I've got a whole video that takes you through the importance of that self-awareness and that future focus in order to create success and happiness. So we need to ask ourselves questions like, what can I do differently next time? What do I want out of this situation next time? How can I do things differently? How can I make things better? And by asking those questions, we're looking forward to the future and looking to make things better, instead of focusing on the past and who was right and who was wrong. The third and possibly most important reason that we don't want to focus on right versus wrong is that it ultimately makes us unhappy. When we're the ones who turn out to be wrong, it doesn't feel good. We feel less than, like we've failed or made a mistake or fallen short, somehow inadequate, and it doesn't feel good. And even when we are the ones who are supposedly right, it is a short-lived, hollow victory, and that feeling of superiority can be dangerously addictive. So we don't want to spend any more time than absolutely necessary in this place of feeling like I am superior because I was right in this situation, because that actually ultimately damages our relationships. It causes defensiveness, it causes disconnectedness, it causes resentment. We always have to have a win or lose in these situations. There's never a situation where everyone wins, and having that winner-loser is what creates that damage in that relationship. It doesn't feel good, and it doesn't contribute in any way to our sense of inner peace. Comment below, is there ever a time where you've won an argument where you ended up feeling worse? Honestly, I can't really remember any argument that I've won where I genuinely ended up feeling like it made things better. Yes, maybe in the moment I felt vindicated and superior, but stepping back and looking at it from a broader perspective, it really didn't leave things in a better place. So what do we do instead? Well, first and foremost, we have to let go of trying to figure it all out, of trying to nut out the details of right versus wrong. I grew up in a household with a ledger. My mother kept a ledger of my behaviours, the things I'd done right, the contributions I'd made, the mistakes I'd made, my bad behaviours, and if the balance was off, I ended up in the bad books, and I hated living in that environment. I did not like having to keep track of those details to that extent, and I was very glad to let go of that as soon as I possibly could. We also need to disengage from the self-image that we have of ourselves, of always being right, of always having the answers, of always having the last word. I know for me, this is something that I still have to work on, to recognise that it's just not worth it to try and have the last word, to prove myself right. We need to let go of that idea that somehow we have to be right in order to feel okay with ourselves. We also need to pick our battles. We need to look at this conflict and say, if I try and win in this situation, is that actually worth the potential damage it's going to cause? What are my priorities here? Will it actually improve my well-being? Does it actually line up with my values? Will it actually increase connection? And if it won't do those things, is it really worth having that conversation? Is winning really worth losing all of those things? We need to actually focus on accepting the situation as it is rather than trying to fight what happened to try and control the outcomes. We need to step back and be neutral about what happened as much as possible, to understand it's happened, what's happened has happened, we can't change what's happened, where can we go from here? And to come at that from a much less controlling, I need this to be a certain way in order to feel okay about myself. We also need to really practice listening to the other people involved, to really hear what they're saying to us, and as much as possible communicate our needs to them without them getting defensive. One of the best ways I've found to do this is something called non-violent communication. And I've got a step-by-step guide on that you might want to download. But communicating effectively allows us to express what's going on for us, to have more success finding resolutions, and if necessary, to agree to disagree and then move on from the conversation and not need to try and battle it out even more. But what's most important in this situation is that we choose what feels best, even if it feels delusional, even if that means letting go of facts and figures and details and who was right and who was wrong. To prioritize feeling good, to prioritize our inner peace is absolutely the most important piece of this. To put how we feel above absolutely everything else, because at the end of the day, feeling good feels good, but it also leads to so much other fantastic things happening in our lives. And I've got a guide to the emotional scale that can help you understand how to move from less pleasant feelings into better pleasant feelings that you might want to download so that you can prioritize feeling good above everything else. So the next time you're tempted to argue with someone, stop and ask yourself, do I really want to fight this fight? Would I rather be right, or would I rather be happy? And I really hope that you'll choose happy. But if you want to learn more about why feeling better is absolutely critical to your success and well-being, watch this video next, and I'll see you in the next one.